Aaron Jones took a pay cut to come back to Green Bay, but there's no guarantee he'll be on the roster past the 2023 season. And A.J. Dillon literally doesn't have a contract right now beyond the 2023 season. So what is the future of the running back position in Green Bay as the rest of the league is making some startling decisions about the running back position in general, plus other calls this team is going to have to make based on what they see from their players this season. All of that coming up on today's show.
You are Locked On Packers, your daily Green Bay Packers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You were Locked On Packers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm Peter Bukowski, and I cover the Packers for The Leap, a newsletter I would love for you to subscribe to. Follow me on Twitter, Peter_Bukowski. Follow the podcast on Twitter, Locked On Packers. Like us on Facebook. Subscribe to the podcast, iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts, wherever you find podcasts, you'll find Locked On Packers, the #1 Packers podcast on the internet, and the show for fans who know what happened. They want to know why and how. Thanks to everyone who makes Locked On Packers their first listen every day. We hope you like starting your day with us as much as we like starting our day with you. I want to start our day with the Packers running back position because Matt Miller, who has been on this program, was talking about, this is one of those funny things, just a little aside. I have tweets all the time where I'm just like, yeah, this is not a controversial take. I'm just gonna fire this tweet off and not think about it. And then I'm gonna come back and 6 hours later, 10 hours later, a day later, it has like been set on fire. And you're just like, this was the most banal take ever. And Matt Miller's take was basically draft a running back, play the running back. If he's good, franchise tag the running back. The end. Draft another running back. Lather, rinse, repeat. And actual NFL running backs like Austin Eckler got mad about it. And when you look around the league, I understand why Austin Eckler's mad about it. By the way, he is already in a contract negotiation, a contract stalemate right now with the LA Chargers because they don't want to give him what he thinks he is due. And the reality is these running backs are just not worth what they used to be worth. Tony Pollard is going to have to play on the franchise tag this year despite being clearly a really good player. Josh Jacobs just led the NFL in rushing, did not get a long-term deal in Las Vegas. Saquon Barkley, a former top 5 overall pick who just had a terrific season, helped lead the Giants to the postseason, did not get a long-term contract. Joe Mixon had to take a pay cut to come back to Cincinnati. Aaron Jones had to take a pay cut to come back to Green Bay. Dalvin Cook just got outright cut. Doesn't have a home right now. Kareem Hunt got cut in Cleveland. He is still out there to be signed by whoever. The rest of the league is signaling something right now about running backs that people like me have been saying for years. Running backs grow on trees. Having a good running back is good. Let's be clear about that. Having a good running back is very good. The 49ers offense was made better by Christian McCaffrey last year. There's no question about it. But was it worth, by some calculations, the draft capital of the #1 overall pick? Was it worth that? Is Alvin Kamara worth $75 million, especially considering I think to date he's still never rushed for 1,000 yards? It is a position where good players are good. They're useful. They're better. I don't think there is a position where like a good player doesn't make you better. The question is how much better and at what cost? And I had someone, a buddy of mine bring this up on Twitter. Like, okay, is the Packers better or worse? Are the Packers better or worse without Aaron Jones? And the answer is they're worse, right? But how much worse? And at what cost? So rather than pay him, I believe his cap number, now this was fake and everyone knew when this contract was signed, he was never going to make this, but he was due to cost $20 million on the cap this year. there was a lot of wailing and gnashing of teeth and rending of garments about this when it was signed. And I was like, guys, he is never going to play on that number. Ever. Doesn't mean he's going to get cut. Just means he's never going to play on that number. They're going to figure this out. Well, it would be better for the Packers if, let's say, he was going to make $20 million on the cap. But let's say that number's really only, let's call it 15. You take 14 of that, allocate it elsewhere, and you pay rookie 5th round pick X $1 million to be 75-80% is good. And I am someone who went on this show and consistently goes on the show and says Aaron Jones is a top 5 running back. He's one of the best players at his position in football, and he is, damn it, one of the best people in this sport, in this business. It is a credit to Aaron Jones. It is a credit to this organization that he represents them, and there is value in that. I talked about this when Aaron Jones took the pay cut and before, about this idea of it sends a bad message to your locker room if you're not willing to pay your best players. But all these players always say, I understand it's a business, and they always understand it's a business right up until it comes time for it to be a business that they don't like. And then it becomes personal. And to a point, I get that too. But for the Packers, you now have a situation where A.J. Dillon is going to be a free agent at the end of this season. He has been a very good second running back for you. Whether or not he was worth a second round pick, who's to say? But he has done everything you've asked of him as an ambassador of the Green Bay Packers. He has said he wants to play his whole career here. Again, the second round value. Can he be a lead back? Well, with the right secondary piece, I think absolutely he could be a lead back. I'm always looking in the draft for these sort of slasher pass catcher backs who I think would be perfect to pair alongside A.J. Dillon. Give him one of those Jamal Williams 3 years, $15 million kind of contracts. Draft someone on day 3. The problem is then you have to say goodbye to Aaron Jones. Well, he's set to cost $17 million on the cap next year. There's already a bunch of void years on here. And the problem is you're talking about 12 plus million in dead cap. So you're not even really saving much by moving on from him at the end of this year. So then that looks like, okay, you're going to restructure some of this stuff, and you hope that they are able to restructure some of this stuff because it is good for him to be on the team. But could that money be allocated more effectively just from a roster building standpoint? I think probably yes. But that comes with all sorts of trade-offs. And I want to be sensitive to those trade-offs because I do think they matter. I think it matters if you're in a position where your team does not believe you're going to take care of your players. I think that's a really bad position for your team to be in. And that has been the reputation. That was certainly the reputation of the team under Ted Thompson, that it didn't matter what you did, you were not going to get paid. They were going to let you walk out the door because they let Casey Hayward walk out the door. They let Micah Hyde walk out the door. They let some really good players just leave without even really considering to pay them. That was, I guess, allegedly part of Aaron Rodgers' frustration in the spring of discontent back in 2021. These things do matter. And that convolutes the calculations here. It's very easy for me, sitting in front of a microphone, to say, well, it's better to allocate your resources these other ways because you don't have to look those guys in the eye. You don't have to go in there and tell Aaron Jones, hey, Aaron, you've been a great soldier for us. You've been the perfect player. You have been everything we could have possibly asked for and more. Good luck. I don't have to do that. Same thing with A.J. Dillon. You have done everything that's been asked of you. You're a second round pick who never got the chance to be a full-time starter And guess what? You're not going to get a chance to get an extension here in Green Bay. Go find your money somewhere else. That's a guy who said, I want to live in Door County when I grow up, basically, got married in Door County, wants to be a spokesperson for Wisconsin. How do you tell that guy? Thanks, but no thanks. This question is not easy, and that's why I wanted to bring it up, because there is a spreadsheet analytics way of looking at this, and I get accused of being that guy at times. And in a lot of ways, I think that a lot of teams would operate better if they bought more into that side of it. But you look at some of the experiments, like let's say in the NBA, where Daryl Morey has just not accounted for chemistry enough. He's also hitched his wagon one too many times to James Harden, which is always a losing battle. But that part of it has to be taken into account here too. So what do the Packers do? How do they coordinate this? It all comes back to, just like everything does this season, to Jordan Love. If Jordan Love is really good, you can say, look, Aaron Jones, if you come back at a lower number, we work this out, we extend you for a year or two, we have a chance to go win a Super Bowl next year, or at least compete, be in the mix, go make a playoff run. Come back, let's do this. If Jordan Love stinks, it becomes really easy to say, Aaron, look, this is not the best situation for you. You can move on. We think the world of you. Let's figure this out. It's a post June 1 or whatever. A.J. Dillon, you can be the lead back. Come get your Jamal Williams deal, your David Montgomery deal. Knowing that they can then go out and use their high draft pick on a quarterback or some other good player while they figure out the quarterback position. If Jordan Love is mid, that's where it gets interesting, and that's where the rubber meets the road in all of this. But I think I've come to the conclusion that it's actually okay to pay a running back a decent amount of money, like the franchise tag in that range, 10, 11, 12, which is in the range where Aaron Jones is getting his money. He's going to count a little over 8 this year on the cap because they pushed some money out. He's going to be 17 on it next year, but $8 million on the cap, you can live with that. He's actually getting $11 million in yearly cash, which is great for him. But Jordan Love those two combined aren't even making starting quarterback money. So if Jordan Love in 2 years is making $30-40 million, then this calculus changes. And you just flat out cannot afford all of this stuff. You always can. But are you competing for a Super Bowl? And if you are, then that's why the Packers paid Aaron Jones. You're paying for certainty. You're paying for Super Bowls. It didn't make sense for Minnesota to keep paying Dalvin Cook that money because they're not contending for a Super Bowl this year. They understand that. Vikings fans don't, but Vikings fans are idiots. So it is what it is. Have you been on Twitter? It is a fraught conversation. It is a fraught position for the franchise to be in. And that's going to create some difficult decisions for the Green Bay Packers coming up in 6-8 months. All right, I want to talk about some other positions where the Packers have some decisions to make, things to keep an eye on as we get into training camp, because it could be situations where guys just flat out don't make the roster, depending on how this all shakes out. We're going to do that here in just a second on Locked On Packers. Before we get to that, today's episode brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. Take your first swing at betting Major League Baseball on FanDuel and get 10 times your first bet amount in bonus bets, up to $200. That's right, just bet $20 and you'll land $200 back in bonus bets, win or lose. That's $200 you can spend betting everything from the money line to the point total to who you think is going to hit a home run first, all in an app that's safe, secure, and super easy to use. Plus, when you win, you get paid instantly. There's no better place to bet on Major League Baseball than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, I've got my eyes set on the Open Championship. I've got some money on Colin Morikawa to win. I get that at 33-1, 25-1, somewhere in that range. That's a name I really, really like. It's going to be Scotty Scheffler, Rory McIlroy. Those guys are the favorites, but Jordan Spieth in the 20s. I like that too. So sign up today and visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get up to $200 back in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com/LockedOn. FanDuel, official partner of Major League Baseball. And thanks for making Locked On Packers your first listen every day. Everydayers. Later this week on the show, we're going to have an Aaron Rodgers signature series and a lot more coming up here on Locked On Packers. So as I look around this roster, David Bakhtiari, very clearly, that spot is a position where they have decisions to make, but it is not just David Bakhtiari. It's the whole tackle position, because is Zach Tom going to start at right tackle? Is he the future left tackle? Is Yosh Nijman going to be the right tackle if Zach Tom is the left tackle? Or are you going to keep Zach Tom at right tackle and move Yosh Nijman into left tackle when you move on from David Bakhtiari? What is the threshold for David Bakhtiari? How many games does he have to play? Because we talked about this yesterday. He's an elite player when he plays. That's one of those positions where those guys are worth the money, where you pay them without a second thought. Big time, premium left tackles, right tackles, they don't hit the open market. They just don't. Like the Teron Armstead situation was unique because of the flux the Saints were in, trying to move on from some pieces. They had been a Super Bowl team, still like deluding themselves into thinking they could win, but then doing stuff like moving on from Teron Armstead, like that doesn't make any sense. If David Bakhtiari plays 15 games, it's extension time if he's willing to stay in Green Bay. The Packers have the money to make it work. Just pay him. But that might mean saying goodbye to Yosh Nijman. It might mean signing him to a high-end swing tackle deal. And this is where you have these questions. Is it better to spend $6, $7, $8 million on a swing tackle, a guy who's not even going to start games for you in a perfect world, versus spending $6, $7, $8 million on a starting running back, someone who might get 18, 20 carries, 25 carries in a game? That's when I think you start to really, like, if you're the analytics type, as I am, if you're inclined in those ways, it starts to become really difficult to argue those kinds of things. But intuitively, when you go through a football season, you know there's going to be injuries. And it's really a problem if your tackle can't block. It's not really a problem if your running back gets hurt. Like you sign Jeff Wilson off the street, or you draft Elijah Mitchell in the 6th or 7th round. Like the Packers, this Lou Nichols kid, he might come in and make the squad. Tyler Goodson. Tyler Goodson's a nice player. I like the idea of a backfield with Tyler Goodson, A.J. Dillon, and then you've got Jaden Reed, who can be, that jet motion guy, maybe even play a little bit in the backfield. Like, come on, get creative. Let's have some fun here. Ben Skoranek is playing, tight end and fullback for the Rams last year. Let's get creative with some of this stuff here. So that's one of those spots. Center. Like, I think Josh Myers has a chance to be a really solid player, but we haven't seen him do it consistently. And if Zach Tom is getting reps at center, if they know Elton Jenkins can play center, if Sean Ryan is getting chances to play center, then very clearly they're somewhat worried about this because they signed Jake Hansen to an extension. He should theoretically be the backup center, but if you're giving all these other guys opportunities, obviously there are questions about what's going on here. I think 3 months ago, you'd have Josiah DeGuara on this list. But you signed drafted Tucker Kraft and Luke Musgrave. You re-signed Tyler Davis. Josiah DeGuara is clearly going to play this other kind of position. He's going to be this fullback, H-back hybrid kind of player that hopefully you don't have to bring back on a Kyle Juszczyk kind of deal unless he goes out and has an all-pro kind of season. He's become a leader on this team. I don't think there's any question there. We talked about running back, of course. How does this defensive line rotation shake out? Now they've invested in it. Colby Wooden and Carl Brooks. You come in, you've got day 3 picks there. You've already invested in Devontae Wyatt for sure. Kenny Clark is under contract. Could get set up to get another one of these monster deals. TJ Slayton going to play the nose. I think they're in good-ish shape there. We know what's going to happen on the edge. They're going to pay Rashawn Gary in all likelihood. You just drafted Lucas Van Ness. You have Preston Smith for at least this year, probably next year too, given the shape of his contract. Inside linebacker, it's going to be Quay Walker's team. Now, Devondre Campbell, they signed to an extension last offseason. But whether or not he stays, They drafted this cornerstone player. He's going to get the chance to succeed or fail on his own terms. We talked about this safety plan yesterday. It's a bad one, but it's a plan. They don't have a long-term plan there. So what do you do about that? And at corner, they're in great shape at corner. A lot of good players, some young players, receiver, they've invested in the young players. We know what their plan is there. Quarterback, obviously there's a decision to be made there. It's interesting, there aren't really that many places where you're going, we got to find out. Now, are they the kind of player that is going to get you over the hump? Can they be, a really good player on the Super Bowl team? We'll see. But I'm just talking about long-term starter. I think John Runyon Jr. falls in that category. I think it's interesting that their offensive line is really good. I expect it to be really good, but part of the reason it's really good is it's really deep. If you can sustain an injury here, because then you can slot this other guy here, you can move this guy here, you can put that guy there. They have long-term answers at tackle potentially. They've drafted left guard, right guard, center. Now, whether Josh Myers and Sean Rhyan can actually step up and be those players, we're going to see. That's still an open question at this point. And I hate to be kind of cliche about it, but it's all going to come back to the quarterback. It's all going to come back to what the quarterback can be, who that is with Jordan Love. And if you answer that question, a lot of these other questions just frankly become axiomatic. All right, we're going to finish up here on today's episode of Locked On Packers. Thanks to everyone who makes Locked On Packers their first listen every day. Everydayers, go check out The Leap, a newsletter I would love for you to subscribe to. My next installment of our roster series comes up on Wednesday. So more to talk about there on the most important players on this Packers roster. We're going to ramp up here. Once training camp opens, we're going to start writing a little bit more. And then once the regular season starts, we've got 5 days a week, baby. And then, of course, Locked On Sports Today is our all sports show. I host that one as well. It's the biggest stories in sports in under 20 minutes with our unparalleled access to our local experts. Some companies are pivoting away from local content. We are leaning in because we believe it matters to you. I want to finish up here because we had some photos from the party in California. There were 2 of them, actually. One was a defensive line party. Our pal Eddie McGilvra, who works with Kenny Clark, who worked with Lucas Van Ness in the pre-draft process, had the whole Packers defensive group out. And I mentioned this in The Leap, a newsletter I would love for you to subscribe to, that he was raving about Colby Wooden. Was just like, this dude is unbelievable. I love that they're doing this. I love it because it is certainly a team building thing. I think some of that soft skill stuff matters. It's a camaraderie thing. I think that culture matters. But most importantly, at least for this, and we're going to get to the offense in a sec, it's an accountability thing. Because defensive linemen especially, offensive linemen, this is true too, it's very easy. When your job is to play at 330, it's very easy to be 350 in the offseason. Because of the amount of calories that you have to put on your body and the amount of work that it takes to stay at that number. I don't think people realize how hard these guys have to work. And you go, oh, poor baby, he's got to eat a lot more calories. It's not just a lot more calories. You have to put on the calories and stay strong, do all the work. So you have to modulate both of those things. That's why you see a lot of these players go the other way when they are done playing, these offensive linemen. Alan Faneca, Russell Okung, these guys lose 150 pounds. Joe Thomas, by the way, looks like a gladiator. He looks ripped. And he's always been, he's never been one of those big, rotund players. But the accountability piece for someone like Devontae Wyatt, a young player who there were some questions about work ethic and attitude. Kenny Clark going, this is what we do here. We work our asses off in the offseason to get better every year. I already got my bag. I already became the highest paid defensive lineman on this team. I got my 60 million or whatever it was. But I'm out here working. Just because you were a first round pick, that doesn't mean anything. Colby Wood and Carl Brooks, congratulations, you made it to the NFL. Now it's time to get to work. I love that. And then on the offense, I think you need to encourage the skilled players a little bit less to do this because guess what? This is just the reality of it. It's more fun. It's more fun to run around and throw the ball around. It's just more fun to do that. So you don't have to, twist my arm. Like imagine if you asked your buddies, hey, let's go out and hit the blocking sled. You want to do that? Let's go ahead and get a 3-point stance and see if you can stop me from getting to where I want to get to. Let's do that. No, you don't want to do that? All right, let me grab the football. Let's go out and we'll run a couple routes. Let me throw you some passes. Oh, yeah, you want to do that? Hell yeah, let's go. Like, it's not a hard sell. But it's more important on the offense to have things like these group practices. Steve Calhoun, who run Armed and Dangerous, that's Jordan Love's personal quarterback coach. He called it a Packers mini camp, basically, because you have all these guys out there. Christian Watson's out there, Aaron Jones, Jeff Cotton, and Dontavian Wicks. That rhythm, that timing, that chemistry, that stuff matters, man. It matters. Ask Aaron Rodgers. It matters. It matters to him. It matters to every quarterback. Are you running that slant exactly right? Are you on time exactly to this place? And as a receiver, I know when I run that glance post, I'm going to get the ball right here every time. On this step, it's coming here. Or I know that on this route, he might sail the ball a little bit. So I need to be ready to go up and get it. Or on this route, we intentionally throw it here. And so I need to expect the ball here. All that stuff pays actual dividends. Like there is tangible benefit to doing this. Again, it's why Aaron Rodgers went to OTAs. I love that this young team is not going, well, let's just roll the ball out there, see what we can do. We know we're talented. No, it's time to work. It's time to work. And for this Packers team, I love that they are embracing the work. You have to be in any field. You have to embrace the work or you're just not going to get to where you have the capabilities of getting to. All right, back tomorrow. A lot more here on Locked On Packers. Follow me on Twitter, Peter_Bukowski. Follow the podcast on Twitter, Locked On Packers. Like us on Facebook. Subscribe to the podcast, iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts, wherever you find podcasts, you'll find Locked On Packers. And anytime you want to come hang out with us live, you can come check us out on our YouTube page, Locked On Packers, YouTube, to stay Locked On Packers.